morning, everybody, and welcome. We are so excited to have you here today to help us celebrate Deaf History Month, which begins tomorrow, April 1st. My name is Isela Bravo. I am the community liaison for our county executive, Fitzwater. I would now like to invite up Malaya Coleman and Blaine Schenk to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce our County Executive, Jessica Fitzwater.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We are so excited as Frederick County government and with our community to come together to recognize Deaf History Month. This event has special meaning this year as we are also honoring our nation's 250th anniversary. We are so grateful to the leaders in our Frederick County deaf and hard of hearing community for their assistance in planning this annual event. And we're also so excited that this has become now an annual event here in Frederick County. I'd like to offer my thanks to the Maryland Deaf Community Center, the Maryland School for the Deaf, and our own Frederick County Commission on Disabilities for all of your partnership in helping to plan today. I'd also like to offer special thanks to the ARC of Frederick County for hosting us for today's program. A special thank you also to my community liaison in our Office of the County Executive, Isela Bravo, who is just a joy to work with and an expert in bringing us all together to celebrate our differences and what makes this community so remarkable. So thank you, Isela. As we observe Deaf History Month alongside America's 250th anniversary, it's important to recognize the ways in which deaf culture and history have enriched the very fabric of our nation. Our shared history is not only shaped by our similarities, but also by the unique journeys of each community, including the deaf community, whose resilience and achievements continue to inspire us all. By reflecting on both our common experiences and our distinct paths, we foster greater understanding and appreciation for the diversity that makes America beautiful. This celebration reminds us that honoring every community's contributions opens doors to more inclusion, opportunity, and progress for everyone. And now it is my great honor to officially proclaim April as Deaf History Month in Frederick County. Whereas people who identify as deaf and hard of hearing belong to a cultural and linguistic community with shared languages, values, social rules of behavior, and history, which are all passed down through generations. And whereas Frederick County has many thousands of deaf and hard of hearing residents who work in our community and elsewhere in the region, the county is home to the Maryland School for the Deaf and soon will be home to the Maryland Deaf Community Center. The deaf population of Frederick County includes individuals who use American Sign Language as their primary language and those who use hearing aids, assistive listening devices, or other forms of amplification. And whereas Deaf History Month presents the opportunity to increase public awareness of the culture of people who are deaf and to promote equal access to information and services for deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind individuals. And whereas today we recognize Deaf History Month, the deaf community in Frederick County, and the organizations that increase awareness for our deaf population. Whereas our country was founded on the idea of equality for all, we are proud that here in Frederick County, we know we are stronger when we are inclusive and consider all members of our community. We know it is our privilege to serve every member of Frederick County, and we take that responsibility very seriously. We value the varied perspectives and experiences that make us stronger. Today, our celebration demonstrates our guiding principles as we celebrate and honor Deaf History Month and celebrate pride in the impact of the mental, physical, and emotional labor within the deaf and hard of hearing community of Frederick. Now, therefore, as the County Executive of Frederick County, Maryland, I hereby proclaim April 2026 as Deaf History Month in Frederick County and commend this observance to all our residents, signed by myself and presented this 31st day of March 2026. I'm so grateful to be here with our County Council President, Brad Young, as well. He's somewhere. There he is. And to have the support of the County Council. Thank you all for being here to help us celebrate Deaf History Month.
Thank you, County Executive Fitzwater. I would now like to welcome up Al Sonnenstrahl. Is he here? Here he comes.
You know, I got to bring out my notes right here on my phone. The modern day technology. You know, today's, I'm going to go over some highlights, but my name is Al Sonnenstrahl. And I'm thinking 250 years. Oh, that's a long time ago. But I didn't realize until last night I'm going to be 91 next month. And that means the U.S. is only 159 years older than me. That's scary. Am I that old as well? Oh, I'm hoping I last until 250. Anyhow, we want to talk about deaf history. Before I start, there's a big issue. We as deaf live in a hearing world, and hearing people don't know that they are hearing people. Oftentimes, they make policies and laws and rules based on hearing people's culture. And we as deaf people have to work around and teach hearing people on how to make our lives as equal as theirs. And oftentimes they don't realize their special needs, like microphones. That's a hearing person's special device that they need. We look at that, and hearing people's, that's their hearing aid, is a microphone. Do you all agree? That's the microphone, is the hearing person's hearing aid. And I tell them, they do have special equipment, assistive equipment, and special things to meet their unique and special needs for their hearing. And we as deaf individuals, we utilize our eyes and so that, mentally, we have to think through things because we live in a hearing world. For example, our first deaf education was established in 1817. Deaf people didn't have any education until 1817, while hearing people had education long before that. And that was established in Connecticut. And then later, Gallaudet was founded. Let's go back. The deaf education, the American School for the Deaf in Hartford, Connecticut, was the first teacher of deaf, and that individual was the first educator, was Laurent Claire. And he also established a special education for disabled children. And the founder of special education was a deaf man as well. And now, all special education programs are run by hearing people, but it was all started by deaf individuals. Later on, Gallaudet College was founded in 1864, and that was signed by President Lincoln. And as we move through history, you have A.G. Bell, Alexander Graham Bell. He was a teacher of deaf individuals himself. His mother was deaf. His father was a teacher of the deaf. And he supported the oral method. He didn't believe in sign. He didn't know sign language. And he tried to create a device to assist deaf people hearing, known as a hearing aid. However, he made a huge mistake and goof. He created the telephone instead of a hearing aid. The telephone is for hearing people. But it just so happened that the telephone became the biggest obstacle or barrier for deaf individuals. Deaf people couldn't find jobs. Oftentimes you would apply for a job and they'd ask, can you utilize a phone? Okay, forget it. All right, and they'd dismiss them. Hearing people became overly reliant on the telephone, and deaf people couldn't use it. And it wasn't only that. Every time a deaf person went into a room and they saw a table, I could use that. I use that. And then there was a telephone on the wall. And that was a device I couldn't use. But that became an ongoing reminder that deaf people couldn't utilize that device because of their disability. But then later on, in 1960, William Stoke, he was a linguistics, researcher, and he determined American Sign Language is a language. It meets all the requirements and criteria to be a language, but it wasn't seen as a language. But it's odd. Today, the commissioner of the NFL, the National Football League, Roger Goodell, his name is Roger S. Goodell. His middle initial, S, is Stokey. William Stokey, that man who taught at Gallaudet that ASL is a language, his nephew is now the commissioner. It's just, we have a hard time getting interpreters at the Super Bowl that was run by, and his nephew runs that program. And now it's the pride of his uncle that he has brought sign language to the Super Bowl. And that's what's happening today. 1964, a deaf man invented the telephone for deaf individuals and started TDI, Telecommunications for the Deaf Incorporated, and we broke through, worked with the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, not Frederick Community College, not FCC there. I sometimes, when we say FCC, they're wondering, which are we talking about, the commission in DC or the community college here in Frederick? However, there was a lot of rules and policies established that broke through telecommunications. You back up to the ADA was passed after DPN in 1988. That woke up the world. And the ADA passed because of the deaf president now, DPN. And the ADA encouraged the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, to establish policies in regards to relay services for the deaf and hard of hearing. I was director at that time of TDI, and I went to a meeting with the FCC with various disabled people, wheelchair. They were all hearing, blind, mobility, amputees. I was the only deaf person. I raised my hand, and they'd always, push, overwhelm me for couple hours they left, and I was like, I went up to the FCC and I said, hey, and they said, no, you have to work with the disabled people. I said, they're still hearing people. And they looked amazed at me and shocked. And I said, they are hearing people with a disability. I am a person with a hearing disability. And that it's a word game. And hearing people love those word games, so I played their word game. And they're like, okay. The results, all of those left, and the deaf people took over the FCC to set up and assist in setting up the rules. And now we have a lot of policies and programs that promote for deaf people to have equal access through telecommunications, a video phone, the relay services, and so forth. Closed captioning. In 1996, the Telecommunications Act, now let me back up here. The FCC established the Telecommunications Act of 1934. That was the old regulations, and they kept amending them and so forth. In 1996, they did a complete rewrite of the entire Telecommunications Act. And that was 2 years before that, in 1994, there was a meeting of disabled individuals. And I was there at the meeting as the director of TDI. And, they indicated the telephone is for all. The telephone is for all? How? They said text. And that time, hearing people weren't utilizing text. They were only talking on the phone. They were using their voice on the phone. And they said, you can do all this, and they put down all these policies, and the telephone must be accessible for all. So that created this phone, the smartphone, for everybody because of that. Hearing people have become more reliant on texting now, which is fine for the rest of us who are deaf. And now we have more and more access. So you've seen a lot of shifts where there was no access and hearing people controlled everything, and we've educated hearing people, and they've learned about us, and everything has been modified. Frederick, you look at Frederick, it's a deaf-friendly city. The hospital has interpreters ready for us. The police station, police officers understand us. I'm excited about the future of Frederick and the bond that we build between the deaf and the hearing communities as one united community. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. We really appreciated that. I would now like to invite up Malia Coleman and Blaine Shank again, who are going to introduce us to some fun facts about our deaf community.
Hello, my name is Blaine, signed like this.
And hello, my name is Malia, sign like this.
We'll be presenting different deaf facts. Really, the number one thing, common people in general always think deaf children have deaf parents. And no, actually, that's a misconception. 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. That number has increased probably to 93 to 95%.
Deaf tend to use relay services to talk with one another, and we use various ways to communicate. Here's an example of a video.
That is an example of what deaf individuals oftentimes experience.
Technical difficulties, everybody. All right. You know, deaf people are better drivers than hearing individuals because deaf people, they lost their hearing, but instead their vision is much broader and there's less auditory distractions. There's less accidents by deaf people than hearing people.
The football huddle. That was actually created at Gallaudet University in the 1890s, and now everyone's using it.
You know, the famous, just off of Massachusetts, the island called Martha's Vineyard. It utilized mostly, everybody deaf or hearing, it didn't matter, utilized sign language called Martha's Vineyard Sign Language. The sign language, but unfortunately that language disappeared. You know, the last person that utilized that died in 1952.
Silent films during that era, was amazing. It was really great to see those non-manuals, facial expressions, body language, and then hearing wasn't added till later, and all of that oftentimes went by the wayside.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you learned something new. What's next?
Thank you so much for that. I would now like to ask Linda Stoltz with our Maryland Deaf Community Center and John Serrano with our Maryland School of the Deaf to come up and talk to us a bit about our future here in Frederick County.
Trying to find my partner over here. Here we come.
All right. All right, everybody. Hello. My name is John Serrano. I'm the superintendent at the Maryland School for the Deaf. And before I move forward, I was inspired by Al Sonnenstrahl's presentation because he mentioned, utilizing the notes on his phone, and he showed that. And I was like, ooh, these are my notes. I'm old school. You're inspiring, Al. Thumbs up.
I'm same with you. I brought my paper as well.
Yeah. 90 plus years and still ticking. Anyhow, I want to honor and recognize Deaf History Month. I couldn't move forward without recognizing the Maryland School for the Deaf. When the Maryland School for the Deaf was established in 1868, the U.S. was 92 years old. 92 years old at that time. And the first school site was in a historical barracks. That is a landmark from the American Revolutionary War. And it still stands, a show of the progress we've made. And this, the first superintendent welcomed the class, William Cook, of 34 students. There were 34 students in that first class. Now, the Maryland School for the Deaf shows 158 years. It's been here in Frederick, 158 years. The history connection is an important part to Frederick. Maryland School for the Deaf and Frederick have a strong tie. The Maryland School for the Deaf serves around 500 students over 2 properties in the state of Maryland. That reflects a strong connection to Frederick and the state of Maryland. The U.S. is 250 years. That Maryland School for the Deaf and that history of the United States has stood strong. And we're celebrating all this history, and we want to honor and recognize the current and honor the future of where we are going. What makes MSD our unique identity, a strong identity, a deaf identity? The language of ASL, American Sign Language. The history shows the generations, they've always suppressed American Sign Language or hidden it, pushed it aside. But regardless, ASL still prevailed through those years. And today, that bond and connection at the Maryland School for the Deaf, you have a shared experience of the signing, the deaf culture, the identity, the like identity for those students and employees. And that bond will continue. You know, you look at 100 years, 200 years, 250 years down the road, it's still going to be there, that bond. And now, the society is changing so fast. Technology is changing. You see all that evolution, but you have those consistent things. The deaf identity of sign language, the look assist of Frederick City, the Maryland School for the Deaf, you know, you're getting new buildings, new enhancements. The students are evolving and changing. The attire, what they're wearing is, the signs are changing, but you still have the same strong identity of deaf culture and the sign language. That, between now and the future, will remain. And that, that gift, the generational gift, that shows, between the hope and opportunity, you're hoping for the students. Between now and 100, 200, 300 years down the road, the students now are going to pave the way for the future generations to stand strong with that bond with Frederick. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here on behalf of Maryland Deaf Community Center. It is progressing along. We're thrilled to see where it's come from. I know I'm getting, when is it going to open? When is it going to open? It will open. It is going to open this year, definitely during the 250th anniversary of our nation. When exactly the date, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to be having a meeting with our board. And we just recently got a lot of the painting done, and we're seeing that progress. We're seeing the furniture and all the other different installations, the restrooms being built, the rooms being built, the desks being built. And there's 9 members on the board and different staff. We've been working on this for over 6 years. They've rolled up their sleeves. They haven't given up. Us being a nonprofit organization, we've been contacting the city. We've gotten wonderful support from them. We've gotten wonderful support from the county. And I know that there are wonderful people that are working hard for this community center. They've got our support. We've received federal support as well. It's just been truly amazing. And we are super excited that we're going to have the first deaf community center in the entire state of Maryland. Some states have those community centers, but not like ours. And so us as a board want to support and get through this and have this place for our community. And again, like I said, the city, the county, and the state and the federal nation has been in support of this. It is going to be a home where we can come together and socialize and have those workshops, different things, opportunities and classes there for our community. We'll offer different workshops in regards to deaf culture, language. Maybe we'll have some pickleball going on, some tournaments, picnics and festivities. We could even, hoping to have some deaf artists come in and have some fairs and craft things going on. I want to thank the Maryland School for the Deaf as well for allowing us to use their facilities for different board meetings on a monthly basis, different celebrations, our family fun annual events. We just recently hosted, or we're going to be hosting, a 5K run that's going to sponsor both of our collective bodies. Right. And we really hope that you can come together. And Malia is going to, next year she'll be a junior, and we're hoping that she can come and help us out at Maryland Deaf Community Center. She's a huge champion for everything, and she will be our first class to use our facility. We're building this building for all, infants, children, adults. whether it doesn't time them out at the time of the year, it's going to be an ASL community center. We want youth training. I know children can be sometimes bored during the summertime, and parents are like, ooh, what do I do? We can have events there. A lot of our senior citizens in Frederick County are excited to have this place to come and socialize together. We will have something every day. It'll be open for our community, whether you want to just stop by and grab a cup of coffee and meet some people. Maybe we'll have grab a Starbucks on the way, and you can come in and meet friends. But we are really, really excited that this is going to be opening up. Frederick has been trying. We've tried this 3 different times, and we have not been successful. And we thought that was going to be it, but we were not willing to give up. We knew our time was now. All over Maryland State, our deaf and hard of hearing and deafblind communities have been wanting this. We had our groundbreaking ceremony this past December. No, it wasn't December. I'm sorry, December of 2024. When I mentioned that it was 1.2 million deaf and hard of hearing and deafblind individuals in the state. And all of our hearing community members were like, wait, what? They didn't know those facts. They didn't know the population of how many deaf and hard of hearing and deafblind people we had in the state. It's our time to have this community center. And so I just really want to thank the board of the Maryland Deaf Community Center for all of their incredibly hard work over the last 6 years. Come by, see our ribbon cutting. We hope to have Wes Moore, our Maryland State Governor, attend. Different legislatures. Oh, hold on a second. Let me go back a second. About 2 months ago, we had a legislative meeting. Thank you, John, for being there as well and for letting Maryland's School for the Deaf host that. And we had a bunch of different city and county and state officials there, and they learned so much from us. We still have a long way to go. You know, for example, traffic lights in town. I know that one time someone was almost hit by a truck, and that really, it was a close call. Because a lot of those intersections that we have, the lights, those traffic lights, we don't get the flashing lights that are going forward. And so we stop and we wait for that. And there's sometimes emergency vehicles. So we were sharing all these just needs to our Frederick County, Frederick City officials to let them know where these improvements can be. But again, Marcia Flowers is one of our board members here. I want to thank her. One of our staff, and Bridget Bourne is here, Furl. She's here. I want to thank her as well. We oftentimes send out our newsletters and to keep an eye out for our ribbon cutting, and please join us on that day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind everybody, we have boards and commissions on our Frederick County that advise us on all sorts of issues. Everything from a disabilities commission to senior services to plumbing codes. So if you would like to have more input into our county and where it's going, I would ask you to look at our Frederick County Board of Commissions page. Look for openings and help advise us to make it a better place for everybody. Now, I would like to invite up Blaine and Malia again. I am going to turn over the show to the wonderful students of our Maryland School for the Deaf. Thank you.
Now, the 250th anniversary of America.
I know. This is the future of our students. So now we're going to have students present on some of our national parks.
They're going to start it, but Yosemite National Park is infamous in the United States. They're the first national park in the United States to give deaf services, for example, interpreting programs, deaf tours, and so forth.
And those programs we're hoping to have all across our United States national parks.
So give a warm welcome to Ella, our first student coming up.
This is Acadia National Park. It was set up in 1919. Acadia National Park is in Maine. One interesting fact about this national park: it is east of the Mississippi River, and it is also the only national park in the Northeast. Now, you may be wondering how Acadia National Park got its name. It's actually from the region of Acadia, and that originated from the Greek region of Arcadia. Some really interesting facts that happened. There was, in 1947, there was a massive fire that destroyed and devastated over 10,000 acres of that park and the surrounding areas. Acadia National Park has Cadillac Mountain, a really cool U-shaped valley, different lakes and ponds, wetlands, forests, rugged rocks, and even sandy beaches. The most beautiful flower that Acadia National Park has is the rodero. And these are just some of the animals that the national park has. They've got beavers and foxes, coyotes and seals, porpoises, bald eagles, ospreys, and even the Atlantic puffins. You can see some of these wonderful pictures up here on the right. But there's something really, really cool that Acadia National Park has. It is one of the rarest animals. It is the peregrine falcon. There is also one endangered species in Acadia, and that's actually the bald eagle. And we may be wondering, or you may be wondering, why the bald eagles are getting endangered. People are shooting at bald eagles because they're stealing the food. So unfortunately, they're getting fewer and fewer, and we're seeing that number dwindling. Acadia National Park is also very deaf-friendly. They provide interpreters for deaf visitors, and deaf individuals love going to this national park because they enjoy hiking, the different wildlife that they can see and experience. They love photography, and that's really interesting because they don't have to worry about the sounds. They're able to experience this with their visual language. That's all. Thank you. Wow, fantastic job, Ella. Let's give a warm welcome to our other student, Jarius.
This is by me, Jarius. We're going to talk about Denali National Park. This is the Denali Mountains, and this is how they look. Denali is in the United States, but if you look at the map and and you see it in the northwest. And Denali is in Alaska. Denali opened on February 26, 1917. Look at how beautiful Denali is. The mountain, you see it, and the green grass. You see the animals there. And here, Denali is the highest, you can see how high Denali is. It's not the highest, it's in, you have Mount Everest in Asia. Denali is the highest in the US. And here you have, mountain climbers, and they climb Denali, and Scott and Shayna, they graduated from the Maryland School for the Deaf in 2007, and Shayna in 2010. And they climbed. You see more. Look at this and everything they have done. The Denali, they call this flower the fireweed. And then you have the Dall sheep, and this is how they look. And you have a moose
They
from
will often
Denali.
see in the national park.
And you have the ring tree. You see all the snow that's captured with these trees. And you have the grizzly bear. They tend to eat the salmon. And I like salmon as well. Thank you for watching this national park with me.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Let's give them another round of applause.
Another fun fact, deaf people, they get free unlimited passes to any national park. They do not have to pay to go to national parks. Thanks for coming. Round of applause like this.
This concludes our program. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today.